everyone, this is Charmaine here. I'm the dietitian that helps people reverse insulin resistance and reverse type 2 diabetes with plant-based eating. And today I'm sharing an interview that I did with a lovely lady, GHALIA, and she is living with type 1 diabetes. And in this interview, I will share a lot of information about reversing insulin resistance and type 1 diabetes, and also share about how GHALIA improved her insulin ratio by adopting a plant-based lifestyle. So make sure you stay tuned for the interview. And I believe that no matter if you have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, or if you don't have diabetes, you'll still benefit greatly from this video. It's a lot of information, so make sure you take out a pen and paper and drop down the notes, and I'll see you in the interview.
Hi, I'm GHALIA here, and I'm known as, at Type 101 with GHALIA on Instagram. I am type 1 diabetic, just kind of trying to, talk about type 1 more openly, about life with type 1, the struggles, the ups, the downs, sharing things that have worked for me personally, and, things that I want to share with everybody, that I think, if you could benefit from, why not? So this is Charmaine here for, people who don't know. I reached out to Charmaine a while ago, coming across her on Instagram. She is a registered dietitian and nutritionist that helps people with diabetes reverse insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is not something that is exclusive to type 2 diabetics. There are a lot of type 1 diabetics that also suffer from insulin resistance. I have personally, struggled with insulin resistance. And so I reached out to Charmaine to, get a little bit of support and, try learn about how to tackle this in my life. So Charmaine, do you want to, share a little bit about yourself, what you do?
Yeah. So my name is Charmaine, and I'm a dietitian that helps people reverse insulin resistance. I mainly focus on people living with type 2 diabetes, but this is, with a plant-based eating, it's actually good for people living with type 1 or type 2 diabetes as well. And I started looking into plant-based when I saw how my clients were doing really good with a plant-based diet. And so I decided to run my own nutrition practice on helping people reverse insulin resistance naturally with plant-based eating. So yeah, that's me.
I love that. Okay, awesome. So I have like a list of questions that I, want to ask you, that I'm going to ask Charmaine. And, these are questions that I have come up with myself, and questions that, I wish I had the answers to earlier on in my journey. So, hopefully sharing this kind of information can help somebody out there. Like, that's all we're trying to do. So question number one is, in the diabetic community as a whole, right, not just type 1, there's this idea and recommendation that comes to us so early on, after being diagnosed, of, oh, you should follow low carb. And if it's not explicitly said as low carb, it's kind of like a, nudge. It's like, oh, swap this rice out for, I don't know, chicken or something. Yeah. Where do you think that comes from? And is there science or anything to support that kind of, philosophy of low carb is the way?
Yeah. So there is, I can't say that there isn't science, because at the end of the day, when you eat a low carb diet, it does lower your blood sugar. And that's the case because you're not getting any carbohydrates, and carbohydrates, what your body breaks down into is the glucose that's in your body. So with low carb, in some cases it is effective. And that's why, that's where usually health professionals goes to is, just cut out the carbs. But I would say the reason why I don't, and many other plant-based doctors or health professionals don't recommend that, is because when you focus on cutting out carbs, and if you solely just focus on the blood sugar, you're ignoring the big picture, right? What makes your blood sugar goes high in the first place, right? Like, what makes it so hard to process carbohydrates in the first place, right? And that's insulin resistance. So I think the sad thing is, in the Western medical world, a lot of us just focus on the signs and symptoms. We don't focus on the root cause, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times that's why a lot of doctors, a lot of health professionals usually just go straight to reducing carbs, because that's how they focus on the symptom, on
Yeah.
focusing on curing the symptom, instead of, okay, how can my body be better at processing carbs? So I would say there's definitely science. I can't say that there's no science. There's science behind it, but there is a better way to help with
So
controlling.
like in your experience as a dietitian, as a registered working dietitian, working with the diabetic population, and through your studies and stuff, have you seen, or could you share with us at least, what are the effects of having a low carb diet that is inevitably high in fat and high in protein?
Yeah, of course. So I would say the first one is definitely decreased tolerance with carbohydrates. A lot of times, it's especially people who go on like low carb or keto, like really strict keto. When they first have carbohydrates, even if it's like healthy carbohydrates, like a fruit, their blood sugar shoots really high compared to someone that is not on a low carb diet. And that's because their body is not used to processing carbohydrates. The tolerance isn't as high anymore. And oftentimes, it depends on where you're at, because a lot of times, when it comes to low carb keto, there's so many different kinds. So it really depends on where your body's insulin resistance is at. But I have, came across a lot of people that come from a high fat diet, and it's harder for them to process carbohydrates because of insulin resistance and impaired glucose tolerance. So, but it's not that it's not doable, but that's what is hardest at first, is when they do eat something that's high in carbs, it shoots up their blood sugar way higher than someone who don't do a low carb diet. Or I think another side effects that I always see is high cholesterol or high triglycerides. I always see that, people who come to me, they always tell me, yeah, like, when I did keto or when I did low carb, my triglycerides and cholesterol went really high. And that's usually pretty dangerous, especially, not only for type 2, but also type 1 as well, because type 1 and type 2 diabetes is closely related to heart disease. So that's something that, is definitely something to be cautioned for.
Yeah. Cool. So like for somebody like me, like I've, gotten help and support from you, but so more directed to, to other type 1s, or, anyone who's diabetic out there, or, any person in general, how can I, increase my insulin sensitivity and my carbohydrate tolerance? What would you say is the, the best approach to improving insulin sensitivity?
Yeah, I would say the best approach is a plant-based diet, because all the whole plant-based foods are naturally low in fat. There may be like one thing like avocado that's high in fat, right? Usually most plant foods are low in fat. So what that really does is, when you understand what insulin resistance is, so insulin resistance is a buildup of fat in your muscle cells and your liver cells. So when there's a buildup of fat, that actually decreases the insulin sensitivity. And so that insulin cannot effectively bring blood sugar from the blood into the cells. And that's why there's high blood sugar. And that's a phenomenon called insulin resistance. And I like to use the analogy, like it's like a lock and key analogy, right? Like, let's say the key is insulin, the lock is your cells. So usually it'll work perfectly, but when I put some chewing gum in the lock, right, it won't work perfectly anymore. And so in this case, the chewing gum is the fat. And so if we're able to adopt a mostly, plant-based lifestyle to be able to, quote unquote, clean out the gum, or, to improve insulin resistance, you'll be able to increase your insulin sensitivity and have better blood sugar control that way.
Yeah. I thought of this just now, you saying like, sharing with us, oh, insulin resistance is a result of, fat buildup in the cells. Could you kind of clarify, for, for us, for everybody, does that mean that you can have insulin resistance if you are not overweight? Like, does having fat buildup in your cells mean that you have to have like a high BMI, or could you have that fat buildup intracellularly without being, overweight in terms of BMI?
Yeah, so you can definitely have, I actually see it all the time, people, no matter if it's type 1 or type 2, a lot of people think type 2 diabetes, oh, it's just for people who are overweight, and they just need to, lose weight. But have had many people that worked with me are, normal weight, or they don't have too much weight to lose, or they've lost weight, but their type 2 diabetes still lingers, because it's not just in your fat cells. Mostly what is more important is the fat buildup, the fatty acids that build up in your muscle cells and in your liver cells. So even if someone is lean, there may still be a high buildup of fat in their muscle cells, and those lipids are called intramyocellular lipids, and that's what usually makes people insulin resistant, even despite of what their BMI is.
Thank you. So, I think it would be kind of interesting to share with people, because I've adopted, a plant-based diet. I don't want to call it, being vegan. And I feel very strongly about this because there's this kind of negative stigma around veganism. And I think veganism is very different from calling yourself plant-based, because when you're vegan, you're still consuming like processed products or products that are high in fat. And plant-based to me kind of means I'm not eating things that are processed. I'm eating whole foods, natural foods, things that are, unrefined. So I feel very strongly about the distinction, but I think it'd be interesting to share with people, the kind of results that I have had, because a lot of people do ask me about what I eat and how I manage to eat it, because I eat quite a lot of carbs, and it's something that I never thought I could do. Like, I never thought that I could have a plate filled with carbs and be eating like 400 grams of carbs in a day, but using considerably less insulin as I stick to this kind of a lifestyle. So I think it'd be cool to kind of share my food, my numbers and stuff with people who are kind of interested to see what this kind of diet looks like.
Yeah, I'd love to share that. I can share this screen here too. And I love GHALIA's. Wait, am I screen sharing? Okay, there you go. There you go. I was like, where did my screen go? And I love GHALIA's food pictures as well. So you can start with this one. GHALIA.
Yeah, so my meals kind of always look the same. Like, I always have some kind of a carb or grain. Like, I prefer quinoa because it's native to like Peruvian culture, and I'm half Peruvian. So like, for me, it's like I just prefer to eat it. So yeah, I would have never had like a plate that looked like this, to be honest with you, a year ago. And yeah, like, I think I put here, it's 52 grams of carbs in the plate. And, in the type 1 world, we function off of insulin to carb ratios. So everyone has an insulin to carb ratio. It's super personal, and it kind of dictates how much insulin you're going to give yourself when you eat. So I used to have an insulin to carb ratio of 1 unit of insulin for every 10 grams of carbs. And now it's switched to 1 unit of insulin for, on average, every 26 to 28 grams of carbs. So, a year ago, if I wanted to eat 50 grams of carbs, I would have given myself 5 units. But now I'm giving myself on average 2 units for like a plate like this. And I didn't think, I would be able to do something like that. It's kind of crazy when I think about it and when I look at it. But, being able to do that has been so determined by my food choices. And I didn't think that I could get those kind of changes in my numbers by changing what I eat, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like a pretty standard meal. Yeah.
That's super impressive. We can look at other meals too. And our viewers can get more ideas. This is the plate full of carbs. It's only 2 units, right?
Yeah. And it's like a similar thing. It's like 55 grams for 2 units. And, I had been advised by my team to kind of stay away from carbs. And that was something that was told to me when I was diagnosed, but it was never revisited. Like that advice was never reassessed. And looking back, I can kind of understand why they might have said, stay away from low carbs for now, because it was a very big change in life, when you get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes. And sometimes you just want to simplify things. And that's kind of how I'm viewing the low carb diet I used to be on. It's like I was trying to simplify my life by not eating carbs, but then because I'm human and I will inevitably have carbs, my reaction to carbs was so much worse. Sorry, I'm rambling now. I get excited.
Oh, yeah, I love hearing that. Yeah. And I think what a lot of people will be glad to understand is that our body are made to run on carbohydrates. It's very natural for us to crave carbohydrates because it's what's needed. And so I think you brought a really good point is people knowing that they shouldn't feel guilty if they want carbohydrates because that's a physical thing.
100%. And like I had this today, like I had this for lunch, what's on the screen, and like I've written it's 82 grams of carbs, and I know that it's that much because I weighed it. And I had 3 units of insulin for that meal, and my blood sugars right now are 6.2, I think 6.3. You guys can see it. And I don't know if it shows, but like my blood sugars have never been so stable. Like that's such an important marker that I think is often overlooked in exchange for HbA1c. But HbA1c can just mean up and down, but it averages to be good. And like the variability is something so important. Like this is how flat my sugars have been today.
That's amazing.
And like it makes my life so much easier. At the end of the day, I'm like, it takes so much less energy, and like that translates to the mental health side of managing a chronic condition. So I'm super passionate about this lifestyle, like this, because it's just made my life so much easier.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it's good to just simplify things. A lot of times when we simplify things and when you're able to have a balanced blood sugar or something that's stable, you'll have more mental space to do more, right? I love that you'll be able to live life to the full. That's really awesome.
100%. So I wanted to ask you this because I do recognize certain diets are like usually advised for certain populations of people, certain demographics, but what would you say in general, as like an umbrella, are the benefits to being plant-based, like for anyone, not just diabetics, but people as a whole?
Yeah, that's really good. There's a lot to say. I would say one thing that's gut health. Recently, gut health is very, very popular, and people know that what you put in your gut is very important. So I would say actually a plant-based lifestyle is perfect for gut health and your microbiome because not only does there's plant-based sources of probiotics like kimchi or like sauerkraut. Things are like miso, naturally fermented foods are perfect for your gut health, but also all of the fiber that you're eating, the different types of plant foods, like let's say oatmeal has a different fiber compared to like broccoli, right? So the more diverse your fiber is, the more diverse your microbiome is because the probiotics are getting different foods because they eat fiber. But anyways, gut health is something that's fantastic. Of course, like weight loss is side benefit from this as well, or just, healthy weight maintenance.
Yeah.
Energy, I would say energy is huge. A lot of people tell me how much energy they have after they go on this lifestyle. And I think cancer prevention as well. And there's been a lot of research how like red meat, or just meat in general, processed meat, is highly linked to cancer, and is either a grade 1 or grade 2 carcinogen. And so a lot of people don't like to talk about that, especially in America. They don't like to talk about that, but it's true. Like if you do avoid meat, that can greatly lower your cancer prevention and even kidney health. That's one thing I forgot to mention. A high protein diet tax a lot on your kidney. So with a plant-based diet, it's moderate amounts of protein that can actually save your kidney from having too much burden. So I can go on and on, but I would say, and then also heart health, that's a huge one, because any plant foods that you're eating has no cholesterol, very low saturated fat, that is really great for your plant health, really great for your health. And also soluble fiber in almost all grains and legumes, and they're very beneficial for lowering cholesterol as well.
So you mentioned diversifying the gut microbiome, and I wanted to add some testament to that, because before I started transitioning to being more plant-based, and it's something that I'd experimented with in the past, but I would say looking back, I was following a vegan diet. I was eating a lot of mock meats that had so many added things, and I'd look at the labels. I didn't really know anything that was in there, but I would still eat it. And I was having a really high fat diet. I had so many processed foods, and I could feel like my gut health was poor. Especially with type 1, a lot of people have reactive, stomachs, and you can eat something and feel so unsettled for ages. And there's a very strong link to celiac disease with type 1. And that's something that I've personally noticed. I used to have problems with bloating and stomach pain, and becoming plant-based, I rarely see these problems. I feel like my overall health in terms of my gut is a lot better, and it's predictable. Before I would eat something and it would set me off, and I had no idea. I'd be like, what is going on? I don't know why I feel so unwell. But now it's I know that what I'm putting into my body is good for me, and I can tell because I'm not having these crazy stomach pains and problems. I feel like that's something that's so important for people who have type 1, that have this reactivity to foods. So yeah, I love that. And I wanted to ask, there's a lot of talk about how plant-based you have to be to see benefits. So would you say in order to have these health benefits, you have to be 100% plant-based, or can you allow yourself flexibility? Are there certain foods that are just going to impede your progress, or what's the deal?
Yeah, of course. I love this question because I actually used to struggle with just food rules. I used to struggle just being really strict with rules, and that was before I was a dietitian. But the more I work as a dietitian, I know that flexibility is really important, and just the psychology of our relationship with food. And so I think, and I often say it really depends on where you're at. If you're someone that is completely new to plant-based and you're kind of on the fence, then it's totally fine to just start with maybe lunch, make lunch a meatless meal, and make a simple process like that, to swap out chicken or beef for lentils or beans or tofu. Just start with that and then slowly build up, because a lot of times it'll be easier to make simple swaps in the beginning. Now, as a lifestyle, again, I love helping people improve their health with plant-based diet, but I also understand that not everyone wants to be 100% plant-based all the time. Or, even me, I don't want to eat 100% healthy all the time. I'm human too. Like, I love to eat healthy, but sometimes I don't want to eat healthy foods, right? So what I help people do is usually I help them build a system where once in a while they can enjoy, foods that they like, for example, like if it's Christmas or if it's your birthday, or if it's a vacation, right? Because you still want to be able to experience life. And so usually what I, encourage people to do is build a system so that they can be flexible at times, and just know that like there are times when people do eat something that's off plan or something that's not as healthy and their blood sugar may be high the next day, and I just encourage them, that's okay, just know that that's your pattern, and it's how your body reacts to it, but that's okay. Don't feel guilty about the numbers. I think that's huge, because it will happen, right? But just know that as long as you stay on this lifestyle and what you're eating right now is definitely healthier compared to before, right? And just focusing on the big picture will really help. But if people are looking for like a number, like how many percent, I would say like maybe like 80, 70, 80, 90%, it'll still be really helpful. Again, everybody is different. So it's really up to you to decide, but just know that you don't have to be perfect to do this.
I love that. And I think it's so important, to hear that from an actual like registered healthcare professional, because like, for example, I started out on social media involved with fitness, and it's such a big thing in the fitness community to like limit yourself so much when it comes to your food, and it's like a punishment, and I think for most people, what I've observed is that like limitation, it means when you do allow yourself to have a treat, people have this mindset of, oh, I messed up, and they take it to an extreme, and it becomes like an unhealthy eating behavior of, oh, like it's like it becomes a binge, because they're like, I messed up anyways, I might as well. So I think it's so important to give yourself room to be flexible, because it actually, at least in my experience, and what I've seen, it really helps you actually be more successful in the long run, because and you can be forgiving because you allow yourself, that leeway of, oh, I would like to have chocolate, I'm going to have some chocolate. And it's not like I have failed and I'm a failure. So I love that. And I think it's so important to hear, someone in your line of work say that, because it's so encouraging for, an average person to be like, oh, I can do this. It doesn't mean I have to be at the 100% mark all the time. So thank you for saying that.
And I always say, like if you get 95, 96, 97, you're still getting an A, right? Like, like there's 3% of your meals, like, it's not completely plant-based, but you're still getting an A for trying, and the whole big picture is more important.
I love that.
So I hope you enjoyed the first part of the interview. Make sure you stay tuned for the second part. It is a lot more value in there, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And if you liked this video, make sure you press thumbs up so that more people can find this video and find this information so they can improve their lives. And if you are interested in working with me and my team on reversing insulin resistance, I do have a nutrition coaching program, and if you're interested, make sure you book a call with us to see if it's a great fit for you, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.